The two types of array formulas I want to cover here are single and multi-cell arrays, and they are used to do multiple calculations on cells in a group, known as an array, simultaneously. So for example, I've got the gross here for the weekly pay of their hours multiplied by the rate, but instead of doing it cell by cell or one cell then copying and pasting it, I want to use an array formula to do it all at once. So to do that, I need to select the entire column here that I want the results of the hours multiplied by the rate to end up in. So to select the entire column, I can click and drag, or if the column was really long, I mean that could be quite tedious, and I know the range, then just come up here in the name box and type in J5, which is the current cell that I'm in, colon, which means through, and then J14, the end cell here, hit enter, and it selects it for me right there. Then with it selected, go ahead and type in equals, and then go ahead and type in your formula, which is going to be this column multiplied by that column. So it's going to be H5 colon H14, selects the entire column, and then the symbol for multiplication, which is asterisk, and then the next column, which I gave it a name so I don't have to type in I5 through I14, and the name is RAT. There we go, little name tag for the name. Double click on it, and then instead of hitting enter, because if I hit enter, it's not going to give me the multi-cell array formula here to update all these cells down below by taking this range, multiplying it by this range, by adding the results here over into this range. So to do this, I have to hold down the Control key, the Shift key, and then I can go ahead and hit enter. So Control Shift Enter. Hey, isn't that cool? There you go. Now notice up here in the formula bar, for any of the cells that I have selected, you got these squiggly brackets to let you know that it's an array formula. Why is that important? Because if you try to select one of the cells or even part of the cells and hit the delete key on the keyboard, it says you can't change part of an array. Okie dokie. So if you want to change any part of it or get rid of it altogether, you have to select the entire range, then hit your delete key, and then you can go ahead and do your more customized functions and formulas where you can update them whenever and however you want, but not with an array. So let's go ahead and undo that to get our array back up. And then the next one I want to do is a single cell array formula. So I've got my single cell over here, and I want to take the hours and multiply it by the rate to get the average weekly pay. Now with the gross here, I could go ahead and select the range and come down to the status bar and say, okay, there's the average, about 1300. But let's say that I didn't have this, and it's not there, and instead of creating this, I just want to go ahead and calculate it really quickly what the average pay is for the week. So to do that, type in equals average, and there it is with it highlighted. Hit the tab key to pop it open, and then type in the first range, which is going to be cell H5 through H14 for the hours. So H5 through H14, and then the symbol for multiplication, which is asterisk, go ahead and type that in, and then the next range, which I could type in I5 through I14, but since I have the name of the range, which is RAT, and there it is right there, I can arrow down to select it, hit the tab key to pop it open, and you can see it's got it selected over here. Then when I'm finished, I can go ahead and close the parentheses, and then to have this processed correctly, I can't hit enter. I got to tell Excel that this is an array formula, where I'm taking this range and multiplying it by that range with one cell across from the next to get the total here. To do that, hold down those keys, Control Shift, and then hit enter. And there we go. So is that the same as when I select this, the average, 1358 down below, 1358? Yeah, it checks out. If there's a part of your worksheet that you want Excel to treat as a separate data sheet, you could convert it to a table, and the definition of that is that a table has contiguous rows and columns, no blank columns or rows in between, that Excel treats as a separate data sheet from the rest of the worksheet. So there are two ways you can go ahead and convert your data range into a table. One way is to go ahead and select the range, come up here, click on the Insert tab, go to the Tables group, and it's right there, Table. Go ahead and click on it. To begin the process, you get the marching ants, so it verifies what you have selected that you want converted into a table. But if not, you can click on the collapsible dialog box button and click and drag to select the range, then hit enter to pop it back open. And then you can see that it's got My Tables has headers checked, meaning that do you have a header row, a header for each column, a label for this is the essential oils column, that's the category price and stock and so forth. If so, make sure that it's checked if it's not checked, and then go ahead and click OK, and it converts it accordingly. So let me go ahead and click somewhere within it. You have your header row, which is a different color from the data down below. So you can tell that these are the labels for these columns here. And then you get these little drop-down triangles here that allows you to sort the data within that column, or for like the essential oils, you can sort it for the category or the price. We'll talk about that in a later training video. Then down below within the data range, you get these banded columns. So that way you can see, like for clove, it's one color in between two darker blues. That way when you're going from left to right, it can keep your eye focused and not going down here up here, because you got two bumpers of the same color that's guiding you and saying stay back on a lighter path here, at least as far as for the clove essential oil goes. And then another way to convert your data range into a table, let me go ahead and hit undo. And by the way, in the next training video, if you don't have the undo, I'll show you how you can convert your table back into a data range, but we'll hit undo for now. Then with it selected, come up here on the Home tab to the Styles group and click on Format as Table. So you're choosing a format here, which by the way, you can do it after you insert it as a table if you go that route, and it has its default format. This way you can see the formats up front, like this one, the pop-up when I hover over it says Table Style Light 4. That's a cool name. Let's go ahead and select that. It selects the range here and it says, okay, this is what you want. It's got a row header or heading for each column. Those are the labels. If so, and it's checked, click Okie dokie, and there you go. Oh, that's kind of buggy the eyes there. And so in any case, if you don't like it, you can come back up here to its Related Contextual tab, the Design tab, go to the Table Styles group, click on the Quick Styles, and then you can choose something else and click on it to update it. We'll talk about customizing it and modifying it in the next couple of training videos, but there's a quick change. And then if you click outside of the table, then its Related Contextual Design tab disappears. So if you want to modify or design your table, click back in it, and then you get it back up, click on it, and then you can make your changes with what's available here, including the name of the table, Table 3, too generic. Let's call it My Oils, and then hit Enter. Oh, wait a second, it doesn't like spaces. It says you may want to use something if you need to have spaces or that appears spaces, use an underscore. So click Okie dokie. If I gotta have what appears to be a space, then I can type in my, then use underscore, and then oils. So with the underscore, it satisfies that there's no space, but it looks like there's a space. So My Oils, hit Enter. It likes the new name of My Oils. When it comes to making modifications to your table, it's pretty simplistic in that if you want to add additional rows or columns, just go ahead and find a cell anywhere in it and right-click on it, because in the shortcut menu you can insert. You can insert a column to the left of the current cell selection or a row above it. Let's do to the left of it, and there we go. That's nice. If I want to remove it and I don't have the undo option available, then just right-click a cell anywhere within the column and go down to delete, and there we go. We can delete the column that I'm in or the current row that I'm in. Let's do the column, and we're back to where we started. You can also right-click the last cell if I want to insert a row below it because I have another record that I want to add, and you can see that it bands it, the alternating color, which is blue to white to back to blue again. And then in the lower right-hand corner of the table, I don't know if you can see it, it's a little blue tick mark there. That means everything above it and to the left of it within the colors here is a table. And so now that I have an extra row, I can go ahead and type in the next essential oil, or let me hit undo. You can do it that way, or go to the last cell in the last row and hit the tab key, and it automatically adds a new row for you. And we can just go ahead and type in our next essential oil and hit enter, and there we go. Now wait a second, you're probably noticing that I have listed the same essential oil twice. And maybe that's okay if they had different categories, but they have the same category, sedative, and the price, and the in stock, and the on order. And I'm talking about Lang Lang, which is fun to say, Lang Lang. And I also have duplicate, let's see, frankincenses. So for a small database, it's easy to identify these duplicates, frankincense, anti-cancer, frankincense up here, anti-cancer, the same price in stock and on order. But you can imagine if you can't quickly identify them, but not only that, you want to remove them and get rid of the duplicates, so we just have one frankincense and one Lang Lang. Then come up here to its Related Contextual tab, that is, once you selected a cell within the table, go to the Tools group, and there you go, Remove Duplicates. There's the icon, which by the way, if you haven't converted your data range into a table, and you don't want to, you get that option on the Data tab in the Data Tools group. And there it is, the same icon. You can see in the pop-up, removes duplicates. So let's go back to our Design tab and go to the Tools group and click on Remove Duplicates. So down below you have a list of all the labels for each column that you want to identify if it has a duplicate name for essential oils, a duplicate category, duplicate price. Maybe you do have names in there with different categories, and different prices, and you're just looking at, like, let's say, let's uncheck all these, focusing on the same name. So if I leave it as is and I click OK, it'll remove only duplicates within this column for essential oils. So it'll remove the entire record for frankincense and also for Lang Lang. But if they have different categories with the same name, then I don't want to use just the criteria essential oils, the name. I want to include category. Because if I had frankincense that was anti-cancer and also maybe another frankincense from another tree in some other part of the world that had different components that was anti-parasitic, then I want to make sure that I match the two, that if it has the same name but different categories, then don't delete it. But if it has the same name and the same category, then it will pick one of them and remove them so I don't have duplicates. But if I go ahead and check all of these, then it has to look inside each field and make sure that they're duplicates. Like, for example, frankincense to frankincense. Okay, there's a duplicate for that, so it meets that condition. And then for frankincense, it's comparing the anti-cancers. They're duplicates, the same price, the same in stock, the same in order. So out of the two frankincenses, it's going to choose one to eliminate and leave the other one behind so we don't have duplicates. Cool. So we can go ahead and click Okie dokie, and it says it found 2 duplicate values and remove them, and 11 unique values remain. Click Okie dokie, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You can pause the video and count it up, but we have 11 that are unique. So I don't have 2 Lang Langs or 2 frankincenses as far as the conditions that I set up to make sure that I didn't have matching records. If I did, then get rid of one of the records. So I don't have 2 of the same thing. How about we do some calculations? Let's come up here to the Design tab, go to the Table Style Options group, and check the total row. Adds a total row down below that when you click in a cell for like the category column, then you get the little drop down arrow. You can go ahead and click on it. Now this one, we're not going to do anything with it because it's text, but if I go to the next one here, for price, click on the drop down arrow and say that we want the average price for our essential oils. It's $42. Then in stock, let's get the total or the sum of it. And we have a total of 84 in stock. And then finally, if you want to convert this back into a data range where it's no longer a table, then with any cell selected within the table, come up here on its Related Contextual Design tab, go to the Tools group, and there you go, convert it back to the range. Let's go ahead and click on it. And you want to convert the table to a normal range, click Yes. And you get rid of the little drop-down arrows to do the sorting and filtering for the data within the table here. That's no longer a table, it's now a range, but it left the formatting behind. So to get rid of the formatting, go ahead and click and drag to select your range that you want to clear. Come back up here on the Home tab to the Editing group. Click on the eraser, the drop-down arrow. You could clear all, but if I do that, it's going to get rid of the dollar signs here, the currency, and then also unbold the total row. So you may want to pick and choose and may not use that. Instead, you may want to break it down format by format. So with it selected, come up here on the Home tab to the Font group, click on the Paint Fill bucket and say that you want no fill. You can see it kind of clears it up except for the borders. So when I select it again, come back up here to the Font group, click on the border drop-down arrow and say that I want no borders. And you see where I'm going at with this. But let me go ahead and undo all that, because to finish the next couple of training videos, I want to make sure that I have my table back with the fancy drop-down arrows. In order to format your table, you want to make sure that you selected a cell within the table so you can get its Related Contextual Design tab. Now because I chose this style by default, I get the banded rows. But if I don't want banded rows where I've got the same color every other row, that way it helps me keep my eye if I choose this row on the white path as opposed to veering up going, oh, there's blue, stay on the white path. And then you can come up here to the Table Style Options group and uncheck banded rows and it's gone. You can do banded columns, so if you want to keep focus on what column you're in, okay, this is all blue. Oop, don't get out to the white, stay on the blue. Or let me go ahead and uncheck that, go back to banded rows because I like that. You can do first column emphasis. We want to focus on the essential oils, put that in bold, or you can do last column emphasis, and that's in bold. Let me uncheck those. You can also get rid of the filter options, the drop-down buttons here, that also has sorting, which we'll talk about in a later training video. And you can uncheck that to remove them, but still keep your table. Let's go ahead and check it to add it back. And then finally, we have our quick styles. Click on the drop-down arrow and hover over any one of them. You can see a preview of it over on the spreadsheet. You can see the name of this one's Table Style Light 17, or how about Ooh, that one's kind of nice. Table style medium 5. It's a go. Select it, and I like it. If you don't want style applied to your table here, first off, make sure you got a cell selected in the table so you get its related contextual design tab. Then come up here to the Table Styles group, click on the Quick Styles drop-down arrow, and come down below and click on Clear. Hey, the Emperor's new clothes. He has none. You still get the functionality of the table, but you don't get the, I would call them clothes here, that we can make it dressed up and look like we've got something going on. Now, in addition to this, if you want to create your own style, then come back up here, click on the Quick Styles drop-down arrow and say New Table Style, and then give your new table style a name. My spiffy style, because hey, everything we do is spiffy. And then down below you can select your table element. Do you want it applied to the whole table? And if you do that and you click on Format, then you get the three options: the font, the border, if you want a border about yay big or that type of a border with different colors, or to put in color for the whole table, then go ahead and choose that. I'm going to click Close and not apply it to the whole table, but I want to do it to the first row stripe, meaning that the first row in the table will get, let's click on Format. And because it's getting close to Halloween, let's do something orangey, and then click Okie dokie. You can see over here in the preview window, the first row gets that color, then it alternates with white as the default. And if I want in between those alternating colors of orange, the second row stripe, then select it, click on Format, and we'll choose kind of a light gray here, and then click Okie dokie, and there you go. First orange, then gray, then orange, then gray. Let's go ahead and check it out and click Okie dokie. And to apply it to my table here, just come back up here, click on Quick Styles, and there it is. When I hover over it, you can see in the pop-up, hey, it's my spiffy style. Click on it and cool. And if I want to get rid of it, no longer have a need for it, or I want to modify it, then come back up here, click on the drop-down arrow, right-click on it. You can modify it, make your changes, click Cancel, or click on it again, right-click on it, and delete it. When I say OK, it reverts to a default table style. May not be the one that you like, and if not, then again, go ahead and click on the drop-down arrow and choose something that you do like. To be able to filter or sort your records, just go ahead and click on the drop-down arrow if you want to sort your records or filter them by the field here, essential oils. So for example, click on it. Let's go ahead and uncheck all of them by default and say we just want to see cinnamon and clove. Christmas smells. Go ahead and click OK, and it just displays the two. And notice that whatever field I filter by, you get this little funnel. So that way when you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is all we got. Just look on any one of these drop-down arrows and make sure that it doesn't have a funnel, because if it does, and you want to unfilter it, then we'll do that in just a minute. But we can see that it's being filtered by this field. As you recall in an earlier training video, we added the total row, and the cell here is not giving us the total, it's giving us, click on the drop-down arrow, the average between those two cells that are being displayed, and then the total for those two cells for cinnamon and clove, and then on order. Now let's go ahead and click off, and if you want to unfilter this, go ahead and click on the filter, well, the drop-down arrow next to the filter, and go ahead and check all, so we can see all, click Okie dokie, and we're back to where we started. You can do multiple filters. So if I want to do it for category instead, let's go ahead and uncheck all, and let's just see antibacterial, anti-cancer, click OK. And then between the two, if I want something that's less than, like, let's say $30, then I can click on the price and go down to number filters and say less than, opens it up and it says is less than. We'll type in 30 and click Okie dokie, and it's cinnamon. And you can see that we got double filters here. So it's filtering by category and by price. So if I go ahead and click on the drop-down arrow and say that I want to clear the filter from price, then we're back to just filter by category, click on the drop-down arrow and clear it from there. Next, if you want to sort them like essential oils, like by this field here, essential oils, all the records, and we've got the C's, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it's already sorted, but if I want to sort it the other way, descendingly, click on the drop-down arrow. There's A to Z. How about if we go Z to A? So it was at the bottom of the alphabet, well, towards the end of it, which is lang lang. That's at the top, and it's sorting descending back up to the beginning of the alphabet down below with the C's. And you can see up here that you have a little down arrow next to the down triangle showing you that it's descending. And if you want to go ahead and clear that, click on the drop down arrow, go ahead and go to sort by color, do custom sort, and there's the sort right here. And you can change it if you want to go back to ascending. Click Okie dokie, and now it has the arrow pointing up. So it leaves the arrow there, and if you don't want to see the arrow, then click on the drop-down arrow, go down to Sort by Color, Custom Sort, and delete the level and click Okie dokie. And it only removes the arrow, not the sort. For example, if I go ahead and sort it descending again, and then I don't want to see that sort here, and I click on the drop-down arrow, go down to Sort by Color, Custom Sort, phew, and I delete this level and click OK, it's still sorting descendingly, but it just got rid of that little descending arrow next to the drop-down triangle here, and so keep that in mind. If you think that you're removing a sort, you are of a sort removing the little symbol there on that little drop-down triangle or arrow, but not the actual sorting within the database here, or the table. And speaking of which, if you want to do more than one sort, for example, let's sort everything by category, click on the drop-down arrow, go down to Sort by Color to do a custom sort, and click on the drop-down arrow and say you want to do it by category A to Z. And after it sorts it by category and it groups them all together, all the calmings, all the antiparasitic, antivirals, let's go ahead and click OK so we can look at it first. Then we can do a consecutive sort or an additional sort that after it has the antiparasitics together, then we can go ahead and sort it by, let's say, the essential oil's name. Now, for the alphabet, C comes before O, so right now, after it finds duplicates, it looks like it's sorting descending. So I can go ahead and do a second sort, click on the drop-down arrow, go down to Sort by Color to Custom Sort, add another level, because after it sorts by the category, then we want to sort it by the essential oils, the name, and we'll do it ascending, click Okie dokie. And so you can see now instead of oregano before clove, now it's ascending after it groups it over here by category. And then it comes over here and says within that group, let's go ahead and sort it by the essential oils name. And then to go ahead and clear all that, click on the drop-down arrow, Sort by Color, Custom Sorts, and go ahead and delete your levels. And then delete that level and click Okie dokie. It removes the levels, but again, it didn't remove the sorts. So if you want to get back to the way you had it originally, whereas by the name Essential Oils Ascending, then you'll have to click on the drop-down arrow and do A to Z. And then if you don't like that little arrow there, then go ahead and click on the drop-down arrow to Sort by Color to Custom Sort. And it says Sort by Color. It doesn't allow us to choose a color to sort by because we don't have any colors set up. These are banded rows, even though you could say technically they are colors. They're not actually a colored cell, but a banded row, so we can't mess with that. But I digress. Let's go back here and delete the level, click OK, so we get rid of that little arrow pointing up for ascending, and we don't have to see that to distract us, if it does distract you. And we're back to where we started. The DSUM, the DAVERAGE, and the DCOUNT functions are just like they sound. They sum up, average, or count up a range of cells that are based upon a criteria that you specify in a mini or sub-database. So before I go ahead and add up all the cells in training videos here, if I have criteria before I add them up, like those who sold more than 75,000 in videos, then go ahead and let's set up this mini database, which I set up by simply selecting the column headers or labels for each column here, copying it and pasting it over here, and then changing the format so you can see that it's different from the database. And then all you have to do is, like if it's for videos, go ahead and say that it's going to be greater than or equal to 75,000. So there's the criteria that it has to meet before we can go ahead and add up the range over here. So this is greater than or equal to 75,000, and then holding down the control key, so is 91, 122, and 88. So down below, the total sum should be, or will be, when I'm done, you can see is 379,000 and some change. So to go ahead and do this, let's scroll over, and I created another little, you could call it mini database, but my labels for the examples that I want to cover here to do the DAVERAGE, DSUM, and DCOUNT. So to go ahead and do the DSUM, the D being the operative word, database. So to sum up my database, let's go ahead and type in equals DSUM, and you can see right here in the pop-up, it adds the numbers in the field column of records in the database that matches the conditions you specify. So with that highlighted, go ahead and hit the tab key to pop open the function, and there are the three arguments. First of all, it says where's the database. So let's go ahead and scroll over here, click and drag to select the database, and then you can see up here in the formula bar, well, I don't remember what the next step is, so if I want to go ahead and scroll back and look in the syntax here, that's fine. Or if you don't want to scroll back and forth, then come up here and click on the fx, the function. It'll open it up and show you what you've done so far. and break it down, give you a little bit more detail. So there's the database, A5 through E11, and it gives you the name, the column labels for the database. Then down below in the field, you can see here, it gives a description, and it says the field is either the label of the column in double quotation marks or a number that represents the column position in the list. And we can do either or, we'll do both. First off, let's go ahead and do the double quotation marks because the field that we want to go ahead and add up, the column that is the videos. So open quotations, then videos, close quotes, and we can go ahead and move on to the criteria. And the criteria is a range of cells that contains the conditions you specify. The range includes a column label and one cell below the label for a condition. So there's our column labels and then one cell below for the condition. So we can go ahead and click on its collapsible dialog box button and then click and drag to select the labels and then the one cell down below for the condition. And then go ahead and hit the enter key on the keyboard to pop it back open. And then you can see the result before I go ahead and click OK, which is 379,000 and some change. And so if I didn't see what I was expecting, then I may want to double check my work until I can see the number that I'm thinking should come out. And if it does, go ahead and click Okie dokie. And there you go. And remember, we came over here to double check our work by control clicking the cells here and coming down here, and excellent, it worked out. Now we also have the other option when let's scroll over again, came back up here and double clicked within the cell. As you recall, it says you can either choose it by the name of the column, the label for that column, or the index number for that column. And so with the database selected, how Excel numbers the columns is from left to right. The furthermost, which we can't see, let's scroll over a bit more, is the name column. So there's 1, 2. So that's going to be column 2. So if I come up here in the formula bar and I delete in quotes the name of the column, but type in the column number, then hit enter, it brings up the same thing. So either or works. Now once you learn one of these, doing the others like the DAVERAGE or DCOUNT, it's pretty simple because it basically follows the same pattern. Let me go ahead and scroll back. The problem that I run into with this is that when I want to go ahead and do the next one, the average of the total, maybe I want to do the average for the total books. If I do that, then what keeps me from identifying which column I'm getting the sum and the average? Unless I specify it up here and say this is the average total for the books, this is the sum total for the videos, that's going to get a bit confusing. And it's going to be based upon one condition here. I can do multiple conditions, but we'll do that in just a minute. So to keep it simple, let me go ahead and just delete this and delete the videos and just focus on the books here. And so for the books, let's set the condition under the books label here in the sub or mini database, the criteria, to say that we want to average all those cells that are above 130,000. So I'll do greater than or equal to. Make sure that the equals always comes after the greater than or less than symbol, because if you do it before, you're going to get errors. And then we'll do 130,000. Hit enter. And then come up here underneath the average of the total and do equals DAVERAGE. There we go. Averages the values in a column in a list or database that matches conditions you specify. So with it highlighted, hit the tab key to pop open the function here. Where's the database? Go ahead and click and drag to select it. Or if you gave a name of it, you named your range, and then just type in the name, as we learned in earlier training videos. Then hit comma. And then the field, we can type in quotes, books, or we can just give it the index number by starting over the left-hand side, 1, 2, 3. So it's column number 3, type in 3, then comma. And then the last and final argument in the syntax in bold is criteria, which is going to be the row of labels, and then down below the cell that contains the condition. And then go ahead and hit enter. And let's see if it checks out. So it's taking anything that's greater than 130,000, which is 146, 133, 146 again, and let's compare 142,000 down below 142. Well, that's 157. This is 156. Well, you can go ahead and select it, come up here to the number group, and go ahead and decrease the decimal. And we can decrease it until we get, it rounds up here to 142,157. For the final one, let's go ahead and scroll over for the count total. Let's go ahead and count up the number of employees that in consulting made $107,000 or more. So to do that, we want to go ahead and delete the criteria here for greater than or equal to 130,000 in books. because I don't want it to be based upon books. You can see where I run into the problem, because if I'm looking at consulting and it's based on the criteria of what's met in the books, then the count is going to be based upon the criteria for the books and not the consulting. So you can see where you can run into issues. Also, you can see an advantage in that if you want to go that route. But in any case, I want to keep it simple and let you do all the complicated calculations and how your database works. So for consulting, let's go ahead and do greater than or equal to 107,000. And you can see it over here. It's getting the average total here. But again, that's for column 3, which is books. If it's greater than or equal to the 107,000 in consulting. Okay, what a mess. Let's delete that. Come over here to the count of total, type in equals DCOUNT. And then you got 2. You got the DCOUNT and then the DCOUNT A. The DCOUNT counts the cells containing numbers in the field column of records in the database that matches the conditions you specify, or down arrow counts non-blank cells. Now, we learned about the count and count A functions in an earlier training video, but nonetheless, you can see them here if you want to go the DCOUNT route. Let me go back to the DCOUNT and not DCOUNT A, and then hit the tab key to pop open the function. Where's the database? We got to scroll over, click and drag to select it, hit comma, and then it says next, what is the field? And it's going to be the last one here. We can just go ahead and do open quotes, consulting, the name for the column of the field. Make sure it's spelled correctly, and then go ahead and type in comma to go to the last argument in the syntax, which is the criteria. It's the mini sub database here. Go ahead and click and drag the row of labels, then go down to select the criteria, one cell down, then hit enter, and it says the total that earned 107,000 or more for consulting was 2. By the way, you can come over here and flip that if you want to go to less than or equal to 107,000. And there was a total of 4 that earned 107,000 or less. And you can do multiple criteria. Maybe you want to go ahead and say for the count of those who are going to get bonuses, maybe you want to flip this back and go to greater than 107,000, but they also had to have on-site training earned more than, let's say, 112,000. So greater than, we won't do equal to. We'll just do 112, 23, hit enter, and it's just 1. Let's see if it checks out. So for consulting, we have 2 right here that earned more than 107,000, but of the 2, looking in the on-site training, the criteria for that, they had to earn more than 112. Not 112, which is what he did. Otherwise, if we did greater than or equal to, he'd be included. But since it's greater than 112, then only this one qualifies. And who's the lucky winner? Let me hit the home key. Is Danny DeVito. The first date function I want to go over is the days 360 function, and it calculates in between 2 dates the number of days between the 2. It assumes that every month is 30 days. So beginning with this start date and the end date, which by the way, it doesn't include the actual end date, but the day before the end date. So I put April 1st, but it's going to look at the day before that to do the calculation. So let's go ahead and look at this by typing in equals days. And there we go, it's days 360, so arrow down to select it. And it says it returns the number of days between 2 dates based on a 360-day year, 12 30-day months. So if you want a nice rounded number, you don't want to deal with extra days like in February if there's a leap year, then go ahead and use this. With it highlighted, hit the tab key to pop open the function. And you can see in the syntax, the first argument is to choose the start date. That's in bold. The start date is up here for Q1. Select it, hit comma on the keyboard. The next argument is the end date. Go ahead and select that, then hit comma. And then finally the method. You can use US or European. If you don't choose one, the default is US, which is what we're going to do here. So I'll hit the backspace key and not even go to that last argument and hit enter. And there's 90 days. Now it should be at least 91 because I know February had 29 days this year. In any case, it assumes every month is 30 days. And then if you want a percentage of that, go ahead and hit equals, select the cell, and divide it by not 365 because remember, it's 30 days each month, so 360 days out of the year instead of 365 because 30 times 12, well there you go, 360, hit enter, and you get 25%. Now if you don't get a percentage, then you want to go ahead and select this and come up here on the Home tab to the Num group and select percentage. And then you can come down here, select both cells because I want to copy and paste the function and formula over to the right by hovering over the bottom right hand corner until I can see the black cross, the autofill handle. Then click and drag it over, let go, and cool, there we go. Now, if you want to get more particular, like you're working with a 365-day, you want to know exactly how many days between these 2 months for quarter 1. Then let's come down here and do equals year, and it's the year frac that we're looking at. Arrow down to select it, and it says returns the year fraction representing the number of whole days between the start and end date. So with it highlighted, hit the tab key to pop it open. What's the start date? Well, it's right up here, comma, the end date right below it, comma, and then you get the option, if you want, you can actually do the 360, which we did for the days 360, but we want to do something different. We want to actually get specific with a total of 365 days out of the year. So double click on that, then go ahead and hit enter, and there you go. And if you want to convert that to a percentage, go ahead and select it, come up here on the Home tab to the number group and click percentage, and there we go, it's 25%. Now let's go ahead and calculate the number of days that elapse, the actual number of days. So to do that, let's go ahead and click in this cell, type in equals, and take that cell and multiply it by the total number of days that we're calculating throughout the year, which is the actual 365, and hit enter. There we go. That 1 day accounts for February, 29 days instead of 28. So we can go ahead and select both cells, then hover over the bottom right hand corner, get the black cross, click and drag over to the right, let go, and the percentage is pretty much going to be the same. I mean, if you really want to get particular, because it's just a nudge up from 1 day, quarter 2, to the second day in quarter 3, you could go ahead and select these cells and convert it back to a number, click on the drop down arrow and select general, and then you get really particular because that's 0.2520 as opposed to 0.24. In any case, you get the idea. Let's go ahead and hit undo to go back to our clean 25% look. If you also want to do simple math between 2 dates, let's come down here, type in equals, and let's say from the start date, we want to take that and subtract it from the end date and hit enter, and it's a total of 91 days. Now, why is it a negative 91? I'll show you. Let's come up here and select the dates and come up and convert it to a general number. And you'll notice, now this was the start date, right? That's 42,370, and this is 42,461. The earlier dates, or the further back you go, the smaller the number gets. So if you take a small number and subtract it from a larger number, you're going to get a negative. So we don't want to do that, do we? Let's go ahead and hit undo, and instead come down here and fix it and say equals the larger number, or the number that's closest to us, the date that's closest to us, and subtract it from an earlier date, which is going to be a smaller number, and hit enter, and there we go, we get a positive number. Now you can go ahead and select the dates and convert it to a general number, or you can use the date function, which will return the serial number for the date entered. So to do that, if I come over here, let's say, and type in equals, and say, what was the number for this again? I don't want to convert it. And DATE, and there we go, returns a number that represents the date in Microsoft Excel date time code. So with it highlighted, hit the tab key to pop it open, and then you can go ahead and type in the year. Let's just type in this right here, January 1st, 2016. So 2016, comma, the month, which is going to be the first month, comma, which is going to be the first day, hit enter. Okay, it returned the date, but we'd have to convert it from the format date and click on the drop down arrow and do general, and then we get the same number as like we did. We came up here and selected, well, not that cell but the range, and converted it to a general number. It's the same thing. So if you want to leave your dates alone but you want to find out what the number is to help you with other functions and formulas, then you can go ahead and use the date function to see what Excel sees as a serial number. Let me go ahead and delete that. How about another one? Let's say that we want to find out how many days it would be from this date right here. We can say equals, select the cell that contains the date, hit plus, and then type in 20 days from that cell's date, hit enter. Hey, it works out. January 21st, after 20 days, is when we complete, let's say, our project. Now let's do some other functions. Let me go ahead and delete this and come over here, and let's say that you want to know today's date. Type in equals today, and you can see it says returns the current date formatted as a date. Hit the tab key to pop open the function. There's not much to it, just hit enter, and that's today's date. Now if you want today's date and the time, then type in equals now, returns the current date and time formatted as a date and time. With it highlighted, hit the tab key to pop it open, hit enter. Because we can't see the date and time, it's too small of a column. Then come up here and hover to the right of the column that the pound symbols are in until you can see arrows pointing in opposite directions between the two column headers E and F. And then click and drag to stretch it open, and then we can view the contents of the cell. Now anytime after you insert the now function you type in something or make changes throughout the worksheet, notice that cell that when I come up here, watch it, when I hit the delete key, it updates. So it's always going to inject whenever you do any changes within your workbook to today's date and time. And when you close out of the workbook and open it back up, when it's tomorrow, it'll update this to August the 12th, and the current time whenever we open it up at that time. And notice that the time is military time, so when you get to noon and you go over to 1, instead of from 12 to 1 or 1 p.m., it goes 13, 2 is 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, to right now 7 o'clock 19. Next is another fun little function, and it's the weekday. If you want to find out what day of the week the start date is for January 1st of 2016, you can't remember if it was a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Let's come over here and type in equals and use the weekday. You can see in the pop-up, returns a number from 1 to 7 identifying the day of the week of a date. So with it highlighted, hit the tab key to pop open the function. It says type in the serial number, which we could use the date function to convert a date into a serial number, but don't worry about that. It'll actually see the serial number that this date is based upon, but behind the scenes. So go ahead and select the cell that contains the date, hit comma to go to the next argument, and it says, okay, we got numbers 1 through 7. How do you want this to figure out? Do you want the first number to start with Sunday, or do you want number 1 to be Monday, or 0 to be Monday? The easiest for me is Sunday is the first day of the week, so if I go ahead and double click on that and hit enter, it gives me a value of 6. Now Sunday's the first day, Monday's the second day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then the 6th day would be Friday. So if you want to find out the day of the week, you can go ahead and use the weekday function. Next is the network days here, and it will return the work days between two work dates. So let's go ahead and type in equals net work days. You can see with it highlighted returns the number of whole work days between two dates. So that means if I want to find out the work days, the working days, Monday through Friday, doesn't include Saturday or Sundays because those are non-working days, then go ahead with it highlighted, hit the tab key to pop open the function, select your start date, comma, and then you can see down below the second argument, the end date, select it, and then if you want, if there's holidays, you see the last argument there? Well, let me go ahead and just finish this up without holidays and see what it looks like. Hit enter. It says there's a total of 66 working days from the start date, January, and just right up until April 1st. Now we've got holidays. We have January 1st, and we also have another holiday. Maybe it's a company holiday, maybe it's President's Day, whatever it is. You can include those days in this function by double-clicking on it, and then going just before the parenthesis, the close parentheses, hit comma so we can open up the holidays here, and then go ahead and select your holidays. So if I click and drag and select the range, G4 through G5, and hit enter, instead of 66 days, we cut it down by 2 holidays that we have down to 64. Pretty sweet. And then down below that, we have the workday function that I want to show you. And this one's going to return the project's finish date after you give it a start date and type in the number of days. So if you don't know the end date, but you know how many days it's going to take to complete the project, and you want to start on January 1st, then type in equals workday. And you can see here returns the serial number of the date before or after a specified number of work days. Again, we're talking working days, not non-working days, which would be Saturday and Sunday. So with it highlighted, hit the tab key to pop open the function. Where's the start date? Let's say we start January 1st, comma, and then how many days? Let's say it's going to take 20 days. And then do we have any holidays? Well, let's hit enter first. And you can see that with the working days, Monday through Friday, not Saturday and Sunday, for 20 days, beginning January 1st, we're going to finish on January the 29th. Now, if we include the holidays, double-click, and go just before the closing parentheses after the second argument, hit comma on the keyboard so we can define the holidays, and then come over here and select the range. And instead of January 29th that it was going to finish, if we include the holidays and hit enter, it's not going to be until February the 1st. And then finally, let me go to the second worksheet. You can calculate the number of years somebody's been employed. And the formula that I'm going to be using Let me go ahead and click in the first cell for Max Klinger. He started on January 22nd, 1998. I want to hit equals, open parentheses, and I want to go with the current date, which we can use today's function to bring the current date, today. And you can see it returns the current date. We just talked about it. So with that highlighted, hit the tab key to pop it open. And then you can see it's got closed parentheses, so close it. And then subtract that from an earlier date, which is going to be a smaller number. As we talked about, earlier dates get smaller as far as the number that Excel assigns to it, the serial number. And so the earlier date is going to be over here, the higher date. And then go ahead and close the parentheses, because after we do that, then we need to divide it by the 365 days to get our years. Then go ahead and hit enter, and he worked approximately just a little over 18 years. And if you don't like the extra numbers there, go ahead and select it. Come up here on the Home tab to the number group and click on Decrease Decimal until you get something that you're okie dokie with. And then hover over the bottom right hand corner, get the black cross, double click really fast. And it looks like, whoa, this guy's been here 44 years. The sort feature allows you to sort your records by one or more fields. So for example, I'm looking at Bob Appelman. If I sort everybody by their first name, does it just sort the first name column and not keep his last name and his social security number and everything else that's tied to Bob here together? It may not do it if you didn't design your database correctly. In other words, I got my top 6 design flaws, and they're right here. Excel will have trouble filtering and or sorting a poorly designed database, and these are the things you want to watch out for. First off, if you have different formatting within a column, in other words, all the data must be of the same format. So within a column, all the data down below has no format, so that works. And it's not like this is bold, that's underlined, that's italics, and this is bold. I mean, that's just a mess. It's going to have a hard time figuring out how to sort that. And then mixing text and values in the same columns. So for the first name column, I'm not going to type in Max and then down below have a bunch of numbers in the next cell, then down below that another name, and then a couple more numbers in the adjacent cells. For the first name column, it's all going to be text. And for the Social Security, it's all going to be numbers. It's not going to be a mix of one or the other. And then blank rows, if you go ahead and insert blank rows and break up your database, well, Excel's going to look at that and say, okay, I think the database is broken up. These are many different databases and not supposed to be seen as one. So you want to avoid that, otherwise you take your chances. And then border separation, use the formatting for borders, not drawing. So back to our database. You can use the drawing feature to draw borders, but if you do that, it's not going to work well when it comes to sorting and filtering your database. Excel may choke on that. So instead, as you recall in an earlier training video, to add borders to your cells, like for example here for my labels, I click and drag and select my labels, and the bottom border is a dark black border. So I can come up here on the Home tab to the font group, click on the border drop down arrow, and there it is, thick bottom border. Select that, and there's my border. And then the fifth one, the column labels format, isn't a different format than the rest of the data. Well, here's the label format. It's all in bold as opposed to the data down below with no formatting being applied. So Excel can easily identify the labels because they're formatted differently than the rest of the data down below. And then don't add spaces in cells, use the alignment buttons. So let's go back here. Instead of me coming into, like, let's say the last name Burns and double clicking and adding a bunch of spaces because I want to nudge that name over and hit enter, Excel's not going to like that when it comes to filtering and or sorting. So instead, with it selected, come up here on the Home tab to the alignment group and use the alignment buttons to give it some spacing here, as it were. Or let me hit undo. You may want to try to use the indent features. Click on it, indents it a little bit. Doesn't align it right to the center, but gives it that illusion of adding some space there at the beginning of Burns. I'm going to go ahead and hit undo. So if you adhere to those database design flaws, or actually avoid them, then you should be doing pretty good when it comes to sorting your database. So if I want to sort by first name, and I've got Bob Appelman, let's see what happens when I sort everybody by first name to make sure that after I sort it by first name, that it keeps Bob's record together, which includes his last name, social security number, and everything else. So to do that, one of the ways that you can sort is by right-clicking within the column that you want to sort by and going down to Sort. And there you go. You can sort ascending A to Z, descending Z to A, condescending. No, I'm kidding. You can sort by cell color on top, font color on top, cell icon on top. I don't have any of those within my cells, so I'm not going to focus on that. Or you can do the custom sort. But to keep it simple, let's do A to Z ascending. There we go. Now we have A for Ann, A, B, C, D. Okay, it sorted the first name, but did it keep everybody's record together? For like example Bob, is it still, hey, it's Appleman and a social security number and everything else? So our database was designed correctly that Excel, when I sorted by first name, kept everybody together and didn't break up and just say, okay, we're just sorting the first name column and not keeping the rest of the record together. And then you can see over here the list has gotten shaken up because it's sorted by first name now. So if I want to go back to the way that I first entered the first person into my database, which was Max Klinger, he's number 1, then you can come over here and instead of right-clicking and going down to the sort options, ascending, descending, you can do that or come up here on the Home tab to the editing group, and there's the sort and filter feature. Click on the drop-down arrow. There's the 3 options, smallest to largest, or largest to smallest, or custom sort. So if I do smallest to largest, we're back to where we started. Or you can come up here on the Data tab, and it's right there as well, sort and filter, A to Z, Z to A, and the sort or the custom sort. So when I click on it, it tells me that right now it's sorting by the list column. And if I want to go ahead and change that, we can do it by the last name. And then you get the options to sort on values, cell color, font color, cell icon. We're going to do it by values. And we can do it descending Z to A, and then click Okie dokie. And there you go, by last name. Even though that I wasn't in the last name column, when I do the custom sort, as it were, it doesn't matter what column I'm in. And you can see it sorted, descending, Z's up at the top, all the way down to the A's at the very bottom. And then when I come back up here, select it, and I delete it, and click OK, it doesn't undo that sort. Because what is it going to undo to? Well, Excel's not going to keep track of that. It's just that you deleted it. So if you want to go ahead and do another sort, in fact, let's do what's called a consecutive sort, meaning that I want to sort by the last name first, and then by first name next. So I've got a couple of last names that are the same, Allen. So after it finds and it sorts it by last name and it gets the 2 Allens together, then I can say after you get duplicate names here in the last name field, then go ahead and come over here and sort it by first name. Let me show you. Come back up here, click on the sort button, and let's go ahead and click on the drop down arrow and do by last name first, and we'll do it ascending, and then we'll go ahead and add another level. So the first level is the most important. After it sorts it by last name, then let's go ahead, if it finds duplicates within the last name after it sorts it by last name, then let's go ahead and sort it by the first name, and let's do it Z to A descending. Go ahead and click Okie dokie, and there we go. Sorted last name, A to Z is ascending, so there's, well, I got 2 duplicates, they're up at the top. So within the 2 Allens, it comes over here, and then it sorts it descending by their first name. So let's see if it checks out. M comes before T, but since it's descending, it flipped it, so T comes before M. So there's descending after it finds duplicates, or after it sorts it by last name first. Let's see, I also have duplicate burns, so once it sorts it and it's got 2 or more of the same last names, and it goes over to the first name column and it says, okay, descending, so F comes before M, but it's again descending, so it flips it, so M comes before F. And to go back to the way it was, let's come over here, click in the cell, I can right click and go to sort, and let's do smallest to largest, and we're back to where we started. The autofill feature is used to put little drop-down arrows next to each label for your column that you can go ahead and sort your records by that field. And to turn it on, just go ahead and click anywhere within your database, and then come up here on the Home tab to the Editing group, click on the Sort Filter drop-down arrow, and there's Filter, or you can click on the Data tab, go to the Sort and Filter group, and there's Filter as well. When you click on it, add these little drop-down arrows next to your column labels. And if it's cutting it off or hiding part of it, then come up here in between the 2 column headers, E and F in this case, until you can see arrows pointing in opposite directions. Then just click and drag to stretch it open until you can see, okay, the name for that column. Now we saw this when we converted our data range into a table. By default, it adds the auto filter option. If you don't want to convert it to a table, hey, good news, you can go ahead and add the filter option to your database, as long as it's built correctly, as we went over in the previous training video on sorting. Now to go ahead and do some filtering, like for the benefits, click on the drop down arrow and unselect all and say you just want to find those employees who have medical benefits. Check M, click Okie dokie, and notice over to the left hand side you've got, instead of in black for the row headers, you have it all in blue because it's eliminating or hiding those records that doesn't meet the condition or criteria that we set here for the benefits. So you can see it goes from 4 all the way to 8, and then from 8 to 11, then from 11 to 21. So we're missing quite a few of them that don't have medical benefits. Now, when you notice that over to the left-hand side and you're like, I wonder which field is being filtered, because let's say that it was like this when you got the database, you just have to look up here on any one of these triangles that are pointing down and you're looking for a funnel or the filter icon. You can see it's right there, so you can go, oh, it's this one that's being filtered. So we can go ahead and click on it, go down to say that we want to see all of them, click OK, and we're back to where we started. Now let's go ahead and do some additional or custom filtering. Let's do it for the rate. Click on the drop down arrow, go down to numbers filter, and let's say that we want something that's less than, you can see is less than $50. Now down below you get the option with and or, and we talked about that, the functions that is, in an earlier training video, and it's the same here. So right now it just has to meet this condition, it's got to be less than 50. Or you can say and, click on the drop down arrow, let's say it has to be is greater than $25. So now we got multiple criteria here, less than 50 but greater than 25. And then you get the or option, meaning that it can be either or, it meets this condition or that condition, which wouldn't make sense with this one, because if we selected or, then we'd say if it's less than 50, which goes all the way down to 1, or is greater than 25, which can go all the way past 50 in any case. Doesn't work for this example, but the and does. So let's click OK and see if it checks out. So is it less than 50 but greater than 25? Yes, it checks out. And then we can do additional filters on top of this one. Let's say that their hours that they're working this week or each week has to be number filters. Let's do less than 40 and then go ahead and click Okie dokie. Oh, that narrows it down. So between 50 and 25, less than 40 hours a week. And let's say for the benefits, they have, let's unselect that, both dental and medical, and click Okie dokie. And okay, we narrowed it down. So those who aren't earning more than 50, but more than 25 and not working as many hours have both dental and medical. And maybe we're doing this because we're trying to cut back on some costs, and so those who aren't working 40 hours a week, we'll have to get them to pay for their dental and medical and not have us cover it. And maybe that's an entirely different database. But in any case, when we're done, you can go ahead and click on the drop down arrow next to each funnel and select all, or you can go ahead and say clear filter from Ben. But if you have a lot of the filters applied and you want to not go down each filter to clear it out, then just come up here if you're on the Data tab to the Sort and Filter group and click on Clear, or if you're on the Home tab, go to the Editing group, click on Sort and Filter, and select Clear. It clears out all the filters and we're back to where we started. And then if you want to remove the AutoFilter options, then just go back to where you turned it on and deselect it. So if it's on the Home tab, go to the Editing group, click on the drop-down arrow for Sort and Filter, and deselect Filter, and it clears them out. The Advanced Filter feature will use more complex criteria when filtering your records as opposed to the AutoFilter feature that we learned in the previous training video. So for example, I've got my main database here and I have the labels up at the top. Then you want to have a mini database, which is just a copy of the labels up at the top over to the right-hand side with the conditions or criteria you set to filter out for those records that you want to find. Like we've got a bunch of homes and I want to find those that are 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths. So to get started, go ahead and click anywhere within your database. Come up here, click on the Data tab, go to the Sort and Filter group, and there it is, Advanced. Click on it, opens up the Advanced Filter window, and the default is to copy the filter in place. We'll choose the other option later. Right now, the list range, it has it in marching ants. It could automatically detect my database because I built it correctly. Thank you very much. And if it didn't, you can click on the collapsible dialog box button, click and drag to select the range for your database, then hit enter to pop it back open. Then it says, okay, where's the criteria? Click on the collapsible dialog box button and then go ahead and click and drag to select your labels for the criteria database, and then the row down below where it actually has the criteria. Now you need the labels so it can compare and contrast between, well, this is for the bedrooms, so it comes over here in the bedrooms column looking for the criteria 3, so it comes down here and it finds 3. So after you select your mini database, the labels and then the criteria down below, hit the enter key on the keyboard to pop it back open. And then unique records only means that when you check that, if you're going to have duplicates, it will eliminate the duplicates and just give you one. But since these are homes and each home has a different address, we're not going to have any duplicates. So we'll just go ahead and click Okie dokie and scroll back over, and hey, isn't that cool? So it found 2 3-bedrooms that have 2.5 baths. And then notice over to the far left, you get the blue row headers letting you know that, let's see, between 1 and 15, the records have been hidden. And then 15 and 16 it shows, and then from 16 all the way down to, or after 16 down to 26 or to 25, those records are hidden as well. And then if you want to undo it, let's say you don't have the undo option here because you saved it closed out of the workbook and then you open it back up, then just come back up here on the Data tab to the Sort and Filter group and click on Clear. Now let's go ahead and do it again. Come up here, click on the Advanced, and then this time instead of filtering the list in place, let's filter it over to another location. Let's go ahead and copy it over to just below the mini criteria database that we have over here. And I'll explain why I'm going to do that in just a minute. Let's go ahead and copy to another location. The list range is going to be the same database range. The criteria range is going to be the same range here, and it's already selected I1 through O2, so I1 down through O2. And then copy to. Let's go ahead and delete that. And with the cursor flashing in it, let's just go ahead and select that cell right there, meaning that it will dump everything into that cell, but since it has more than one cell, it'll push it over and then down. And let's go ahead and click OK and see what happens. Hey, isn't that fancy? That means that instead of looking over here, I can look just directly down below and go, okay, 3 bedrooms, that's right. 2.5 baths, okay, that's right. Great. Now you can do something a bit more complex to change up your mini criteria database here. Instead of 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, let's go ahead and say that we want 3 bedrooms, but in the listed price area of greater than 200,000, let's say. Then let's go ahead and do it again. Select a cell within the database, come back up here to the Data tab, click Advanced. We've got the list range, okay. We have the criteria set, okay. We're going to have to select Copy to another location again. We'll have to do it every time we want to copy to another location. And then go ahead and click OK. And it updated. Let's see if it checked out. So out of the 3 bedrooms here, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, only 3 of them returned that had a listed price of greater than 200,000. This other one had 153,000. Now what if I wanted like double criteria? Like instead of listed price, we wanted either 3 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms. So to set this up, let's go back to the database, come up here, click on Advanced. The database is selected. Copy to another location. The criteria range only includes the first blank row below the row header or the labels for each column. So what I have to do is I have to go ahead and let's delete this. And then with the cursor flashing in the criteria range, click and drag and then select the second row below the labels. And then copy to is going to be the same location. Click Okie dokie. And let's see, we got all the 3 bedrooms and the 2 5 bedrooms that are available. Sweet, let's go shopping. Now keep in mind that once you have it set to looking in both rows below the row header or the labels for each column, that if you go back to doing just one row for the criteria, like you eliminate this one right here, and it's still looking in both of those rows below the labels, you're going to come up with errors. So if I come back over here, selecting the database, so I can come back, click on Advanced, so it automatically selects it by default. Then I go to the criteria, and if I don't update that from row 3 back to row 2 to include just that row that contains the criteria, and let's go ahead and copy to another location and click Okie dokie, it includes everything. And why not? Because down below we've got nothing, so it assumes that could be anything, which could be everything. So we'll have to keep that in mind. And let's go ahead and click and drag and delete this. Come back up here, keep it simple. Let's go back to 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. And then scroll back. Now I can automate this because clicking on the same steps over and over again gets repetitive. How about if I go ahead and record the steps into what's called a macro? Now we're going to cover that in a later training video, but I feel it's important that we cover it here to make this feature more efficient. So if I can record everything I do here into a single click, then all I have to do is go ahead and change what I want for the criteria, like change it to 4, click, then it gives me the results, change it to 3 baths. Just make the changes and do the updates in a single click. Doesn't that sound just delicious? Okay, so bear with me and be sure to watch the training video on macros so you get the basics, and if you make a mistake with the macro, you want to edit it, or you want to re-record. I'll cover that all in the macros training video. So to get started, to record the steps that I'm going to be doing and to put it into a button that I can click on, you can record the steps one of two ways. You can either come up here, click on the View tab, go to the Macros group, click on the Macros drop-down arrow, and begin recording, or better yet, come down here on the status bar and it's right there. If you don't see it there, right-click on the status bar and make sure that you have macro recording checked. So since it's checked, let's go ahead and click on it to begin our recording. Well, let's go ahead and give it a name, and let's go ahead and delete that and say it's going to be our filter. And then the shortcut key to execute it, if you don't want to assign this macro to a button, you can do it in a single click, but you rather use a shortcut key. I'm going to do Control Q to execute the macro. And then to store the macro, is it going to be in this workbook, in a personal macro workbook, or a new workbook? We'll just do this workbook. And then the description saying, if you want to type in, this will filter the house database here. But I'll go ahead and leave it as is, and then click Okie dokie. And then down below on the status bar, you see that square there? That means it's now recording. Now it's not recording time, it's recording actions or steps. So the first step that we want to do is to go ahead and click anywhere within the database. So it recorded that, so no matter where it's at, it wants to go right here to the cell, which is F10. And then we want to come up here and click on the Data tab to begin our advanced filter. Click on that, opens it up, and we have to do everything from scratch. We can't just leave it as is and click OK. That is, if you want to make sure that the macro is going to be recording all the steps that we want executed when we go ahead and execute this with the shortcut keys Control Q or as a button. So let's go ahead and delete that and say, what's the list range? With the cursor flashing in it, we can go ahead and click and drag to select it, or if it's too huge, you can type in A1 through G25. Type it in, it'll go ahead and pull it here. And then the criteria range, let's go ahead and delete that. And then with the cursor flashing in it, or if this is in the way, just click on the collapsible dialog box button and then click and drag to select the labels for the mini database and then the row below it, which contains the criteria. Hit the Enter key to pop it back open. And if you want to copy it to another location, then let's go ahead and set that location, delete it, and let's go ahead and select this cell right here, I5. And we'll leave the unique records alone. Click Okie dokie. It did its thing. We recorded the steps for executing it, so let's go ahead and stop it. Go ahead and click on it, and you can see when I hover over it, a macro is currently recording. Go ahead and click to stop recording. Clicked on it, we're done. So let's go ahead and see if it works. Let's click and drag to delete it. And I'm clicking in any cell that I want because I recorded the steps, so when it starts, to go over here in the database. And the shortcut keys to execute this is Control Q. Ooh, that was fun. Well, is it really going to do that again if I choose something else? Let's get rid of 2.5 baths. Control Q. Oh, wait a second. Something's going on with the macros that didn't happen before when I was going through the steps manually. And that is that it jams it over here, something to do with the macro that doesn't like it when I try to use the same area that already has something written in it. So if I go ahead and select the range and delete it, and then go ahead and select a single cell and Control Q, then that's okay. So it sounds like I need to go ahead and either, after I execute the macros, select the range and delete it every time, or better yet, how about this? We go ahead and create a macro that deletes it. Oh, that sounds so fun. Let's go ahead and create one more macro that will go ahead and clear this area or this range. So here we go again. Let's come down here, click on Start Record, and we'll type in the name clear. And then you can type in a shortcut key, maybe W, and then we'll do it for this workbook. Click Okie dokie. Now, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and select the range, and not just the range that is currently being displayed, but the potential range that if we included all the records here, how far down would it go that we want to go ahead and clear out that range. So if I made a mistake, that's okay. Let's just go back because I already selected it and it recorded that. But that's okay if I go back and click and drag and go down here. And then go ahead and hit the delete key on the keyboard and then come back up here and select that cell. It does it so fast that when you execute this, that even though you selected the range once and you select it twice, it just runs right through it. So you won't even see it because it's so fast when it executes it. Now that we have it cleared, well, we recorded the steps to clear it. Then let's come down here and click on stop and we're good. So to execute, Control Q. To clear, Control W. Control Q, Control W. Oh, that is faboo. Now if you don't want to use the shortcut keys but you want to add buttons as I was talking about, then you need to bring up the Developer tab, which if it's not up there and it isn't by default, right-click anywhere on your ribbon, and then go down to Customize the ribbon, and then come down here and check Developer, click Okie dokie, and it's right there. Select it. Then go to the Controls group, click on the Insert drop-down arrow, and choose that one right there that says Button. Button, who's got the button? Click on it. I do. And then come down below and you can see the thin black cross that wherever you click and drag to make your button about yay big, let go. Hey, opens up the Assign Macro box that we can go ahead and select a macro and assign it. So that one's going to be the filter. Click Okie dokie and click off of it, and that's the filter button. But if you don't like the name of it, which rightfully so, we want to call it filter, then go ahead and you can right-click on it. Then when you right-click on it, it has the resizing handles around the button, in which case you can go ahead and left-click in it a couple of times until you can actually get the cursor flashing in it, and delete, 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 and then call it filter. And then you can do Shift-Home to select everything from the end to the beginning, which you learn about that in my word training video. So watch my word training video. Then after you have it selected, you can come up here, click on the Home tab, and you can make it bold and beautiful and choose any other options that you want. And you can also hover, like I said, over the resizing handles until you can see arrows pointing in opposite directions, and then kind of resize it to where you want it to be, and then let go, click off, and there you go. Let's go ahead and do one more. Click up here on the Developer tab, go to the Controls, click on Insert, and we want our Clear button, so click on Button. And then click and drag one below that, and then select Clear, click Okie dokie, and then click inside of it and delete it, and we'll call it Clear. Click off of it. Oh, we could have put it in bold. In any case, let's do 3 bedrooms, anything greater than 2 baths. Hit Enter. Go ahead and click Filter. Hey, isn't that cool? And then Clear, Filter, Clear, before, after. Nice. Now, if you're like, I don't want these macros, I want to get rid of them, I want to get rid of the buttons, we talk about that in the macro training video, but if you're just aching to do it right now, then go ahead and right-click on it. And then after you right-click on it, click on the border of the button, and then you can go ahead and hit the delete key on the keyboard. I'm going to go ahead and undo that, leave it as is, but you can get rid of it that way. And then also for the macros, well, if you got your Developer tab up, you can come over here to the code group and click on macros, or go to the view tab and then go over to the macros group and click on the drop down arrow and get the macro name, select it, and then you can go ahead and delete it. Click cancel, and that's how you can go ahead and remove the macros. And then one last thing, if you decide to keep the macros, you can't save it in this workbook, the workbook that has the extension XLSX. And if you don't know anything about extensions, you can watch my Windows training video on extensions. But in any case, it needs to be saved, a macro, into a macro-enabled workbook. Because if not, after you save it, you're going to get that option when I come up here and click Save. It says, the following features cannot be saved in macro-free workbooks. And this is a macro-free workbook. Now, why would Microsoft have 2 different types of workbooks as far as those with macros and those without? Because macros are very dangerous. And when somebody sends you a workbook that contains macros, they could screw up your computer and destroy it. And so you want to be able to differentiate between the two and say, okay, this one's a macro-free workbook. That one has a better trust factor than those that contain macros, especially if it comes from somebody you don't even know or trust. So to save this with these features, click No and then choose a macro-enabled file type in the file type list. If you want to continue saving as a macro-free workbook, what's going to happen to the macros if I click Yes? Don't want to chance it, so let me say no. And then it opens up the Save As window. So it allows us to change the type from an Excel workbook. Click on the drop-down arrow, and we want the macro-enabled workbook, the XLSM. M stands for macro. So you can see it's not the X here. That's the default workbook extension, but the one with the M. So go ahead and select it. It's going to be saved to my desktop. Click Save, and there we go. So notice that when I close out of here and go to my desktop, which one of these is not like the other? So can you tell by looking at the icon which is the original workbook and which one's the macro enabled? The macro enabled has a little scroll here that has an exclamation point that says, hey, there's something else going on in this workbook, and it's a macro. So that way, if you don't want to take chances because it's from somebody you don't trust or don't know, then you can just leave it alone and not open it up. The subtotal feature is used to total up rows of related data. And notice how it says rows and not columns, because it's going to look from one row to the next in a column to see if it's related. Like for the month of October, if I want to get the subtotal for all the products sold in the month of October, then at the end of that, when it goes to the next change to November, it'll give me a subtotal there. Then go through November, next change, before it goes over there, it gives me the subtotal for November, and then so on. So if I want to get subtotals not just for the month, but maybe for the product, then I have to sort it by product so all the double bubbles are together or grouped, so it can give me the total for the double bubbles. So I'd have to come up here on the Home tab to the Editing group, click on the Sort drop-down arrow and sort A to Z, and then I can go ahead with all the double bubbles together because it totals up the rows of related data, and these are related, they're all together. Then I'll add a subtotal down below that for the double bubble, maybe for the sold or the total amount of income for the double bubbles. But let me go ahead and hit undo and get this going. Let's do a subtotal for each change in the month. So for the month of October, what's the subtotal? Go ahead and click anywhere inside the database, and then come up here, click on the Data tab, go to the Outline group, and there it is, subtotal. You can see in the pop-up, quickly calculates rows of related data by inserting subtotals and totals. So you get the subtotal, then you get the grand total. Go ahead and click on it, and because it can recognize my database because I built it correctly, then it selects the whole thing, including the labels for each column. And then up at the top here it says at each change in what? Is it going to be the year? So every time there's a change, you can imagine if we did it at each change in product, when I click on the drop down arrow and select product, well, there's double bubble. So there's a change, then it goes to Nerd's Rope, then there's a change to Milky Way, then a change to Snickers, then it goes down until it hits double bubble again. So at each change it's going to give me a subtotal. Ugh, that's very annoying because you want to be able to have rows of related data. And in this case, we could do it for the year 2015 because it's all related or grouped together, or the October that's grouped together. So let's go ahead and choose by month. And then what function do we want to use? We can either add it up, count it up, average it out. Go ahead and select one. Let's do sum. And then where do we want to add the subtotal to, or what is it going to be subtotaling? We can do it for the income or the total number of products sold for the month of October. So let's go ahead and do sold. I mean, you can do both. So we'll go ahead and check both. And then down below, you can replace the current subtotals. If you already have subtotals, you can add page breaks between groups. So when you print them off, they can print on their own pages. And then you get the summary below the data. So let's go ahead and click Okie dokie and see what happens. Okay, we get the subtotals at each change in the month column. So there's October, then change. At each change, it's going to give me the subtotal for the total amount of products sold for the month of October and the total income. Change, then we go to November, change, then December, and so on. Cool. Now, in addition to this, the subtotals, you get these levels 1, 2, and 3. That means that when you click on 1, it shows you the first level, which is the grand total of everything that's been sold and the total amount of income earned for all the products that have been sold. So if I go to level 2, then it gives me the subtotals at each change in month. So the subtotal for October, November, and so on. And then level 3, all the details. You can do it that way, or you can just go ahead and collapse it by month and not by all the months. So if I just want to collapse October, over here to the left of the row headers, you get this minus sign. So when I click on it, it collapses the month of October for the year 2015. Then I can skip down and collapse November, and then just have October in between the two collapsed months and just focus on that. And then if I want to bring them all back up, then click on the plus sign to expand it, or click level 3 to expand all of them. Now if you want to remove the subtotals, go back to the way it was, then just come up here on the Data tab to the Outline group, click on Subtotal, click on Remove All, and we're back to where we started. Now keep in mind that you can't add a subtotal to a table. So for example, if I convert my data range into a table, as we learned in an earlier training video, come up here, click on Insert, go to Tables, click on Table. It selects the entire data range because I built my database correctly, which I covered in an earlier training video about the 6 design flaws when creating your database in the sorting and design flaws training video. In any case, it selected it, so go ahead and click Okie dokie. And then when I come up here and click on the Data tab, go to the Outline group, you don't get the subtotal option for this. It's got its own feature for that, and so let's go ahead and hit undo. And then you get the subtotal feature for the data range. Let's go ahead and scroll down to the end. Now there is the subtotal function, aside from the subtotal feature, and that is if you type in equals sub, there we go, arrow down, returns a subtotal in a list or database. With it highlighted, hit the tab key to pop it open, And then it says, okay, what's the subtotal function? Do you want to count up, average up, or let's do sum? So we'll select number 9, the option, double click, and then comma to go to the next argument or the first reference, which could be the entire column here, and then comma, go to the second reference to do a subtotal to add to the subtotal this entire column, but that wouldn't make sense, but nonetheless you can add as many references as you want. We're just going to do one. So let's go ahead and type in the reference, which is cell E43. Click and drag, or just type it in. Let's go all the way to the top or close to it. E4 through E43, hit enter, and there's the subtotal for that selected range. It's just like doing the sum function. But for the sum total, what we can do is, as you recall in earlier training videos, is that you can hide your rows or columns. So if I go ahead and let's hide row 42, well, let's go ahead and select row 42 up through row 5, and then right click on the selection and say hide. Do I still get 33,000? Yes. It sees what's being hidden and it still includes it in the subtotal function here, the result or the value of the subtotal function. And then of course to unhide it, just go ahead and click in the row before those that are hidden, go down to the one that's after those that are hidden and right click and unhide. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.